Grace, mercy, and peace be you. I think I need to turn my microphone on. Grace, mercy, and peace be to you from God our Father, from our Lord and our Savior, Jesus Christ. It's a joy to be here with you, particularly as we celebrate All Saints' Day, where we remember those who have gone to be with Jesus this past year, and also to remember Jesse's 6th birthday. I serve as the top dog for Noah Comfort Dog in St. Louis, and I am also the regional coordinator for all the comfort dogs in Missouri, Illinois, Southern Illinois, and Tennessee. So I thank Renee for inviting me here to give this message today. The Bible passage is from Ephesians chapter 5. Walk as children of light, for the fruit of light is found in all that is good and right and true, and try to discern what is pleasing to the Lord. Look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of time because the days are evil. Walking as his light in this dark world is the theme for this message. And we live in a dark world. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the darkness, but I'm going to show you a few words that begin with the letter D and see how they might apply to your life now or in the past, or somebody you know, somebody you love. And you can see right in the center is darkness, distressed, dangerous situations, despicable, discouraged, depression, distraught, death, dastardly deeds, destruction, disease, defeated, despair, disappointment, disillusioned. Each of us has experienced one or more of those words in our lives, or of those we know. This is what it means to live in a dark world and to have that darkness touch our lives. So we need light in this dark world, and John 8 simply says to us these words from Jesus. And Jesus spoke to them, saying, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. We are fast approaching Christmas time. And at the church we're members at, my wife and I are members at with our family, in Timothy Lutheran Church in St. Louis, we have a Christmas Eve service. And during that Christmas Eve service, it's the late service, midnight service, and as that service ends, the lights go out in the church, and an usher comes down the center aisle, and every one of us has just a little candle. And he lights the candle by the person at the end of the pew, and then we light each other's candles until all the little candles are lit. And we sing, Silent Night, holy light, all is calm, all is bright. Into the darkness of this world, Jesus is born. We don't know if it was a daytime or evening, I guess, for sure. But they didn't have electricity back then. A stable, a manger, probably pretty dark. And into that dark manger, on a dark evening, in a dark world, the light of the world has come to bring us life, to push aside the darkness. But the darkness pushes back. 33 years later, it's a Friday. And for 3 hours, darkness covered the land. Jesus hung on the cross, and all those darkness words, despair and discouragement and disease and death and disaster, and all the dastardly deeds, all of that is swirling around on Jesus and taking the life right out of him. And in the midst of all that darkness, it certainly appears that it has collapsed in on Jesus and put out the light of the world. At Timothy, we have a service on Good Friday night. And at the end of that service, we sing the hymn, "Were You There When They Crucified My Lord?" And we have 7 verses for it. And with each verse, more and more of the lights will go out in our church. Finally, when we get to the end of that song, all the lights are out, and the only candle that's left is the Christ candle. One large candle symbolizing Jesus. And an acolyte will come up and take that candle and take the candle outside of the church so that all that's left is darkness. And as we sit there in the darkness, one of our pastors will take 2 books and slam them together with a loud clap to symbolize the moment when Jesus gives up his life and dies. And as we sit there in that darkness, we wait. Because those of us who have been at that service know it will only take a few seconds and the candle, the Christ candle, comes back out again. And that one little light pushes aside the darkness. That one little light brings hope once again. That Friday is called Good Friday because all those D words, darkness words, did the worst they could to Jesus. And they could not defeat him. Out of that cross comes forgiveness. And on Easter morning, he rises from the dead. He stomps on death and defeats it. He brings the light of forgiveness and life and salvation to all. The sun rises on the east horizon, and the Son of God rises out of the grave, and he is victorious over every one of those dark worlds. The darkness is simply shattered by Christ's resurrection. I went to Home Depot in St. Louis and found the biggest light bulb I could find, and I painted it. I painted it the color gold. I'll show you in a second here, because gold is sometimes used as the color for Easter Sunday. The most precious of metals, the color of sunlight. And so I painted this light bulb with what's called the glory cross. The cross is empty. And bursting out from behind the cross are rays of sunlight. Jesus has risen from the dead, and the light of the world has come. He has shattered the darkness for us. For us. But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for his own possession, that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. At a baptism where your name was said and water was poured on you, through his word confirmed at your confirmation, received in this supper, he calls you out of the darkness to be his marvelous light, to do this. To walk, to live as children of light. For the fruit of light is found in all that is good and right and true, and try to discern what is pleasing to the Lord. Look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of time, because the days are evil, the days are dark. Walking as his light in this dark world. I'm going to show some pictures of Noah Comfort Dog. That's because I have pictures of Noah working with the Jesse Comfort Dog these past 4 years, to give you some examples of what it looks like when you are walking as his light in this dark world. And we're going to go back to August 2014. Jesse had been placed here at St. Paul's for about 6 months, and Noah was being placed at Timothy in St. Louis. 2 other dogs had been in the region in Joplin, Louis and Jackson, but Jesse came to Noah's, what at that time called passing of the leash. Little did we know what the next 4 years would bring for us. But Jesse was there, and that began the Comfort Dog ministry for Noah. And since that time, the 2 of us teams have worked together often. 2 weekends ago, we have another dog in what's called the Missouri Valley region, and this is called Patience in the center, but things have grown just a little bit. We now have 11 dogs. In Joplin, 2 here. There are 5 dogs in St. Louis. At Washington, St. Louis, a suburb de Pere, Holy Cross, and Emmanuel in St. Charles. We have dogs near Springfield, Illinois, and Danville, Illinois, 1 down in Memphis, Tennessee, and 1 that's going to be placed in December. We will have 12 dogs in Missouri Valley, and there are over 120 of them around the country in 25 states. All these dogs have as a very simple purpose is to bring the compassion and the mercy and the presence and the proclamation of Jesus into those lives who are hurting. As comfort dogs in our teams, we seek to walk as his light in this dark world, but not just us. I want you to realize that all of you are called to walk as his light in this dark world too, and that it's not just you here in Concordia, Missouri, but you join together with Christians throughout this country, throughout this world, who have been called out of the darkness to proclaim the excellencies of the light of Jesus Christ, to walk as his children. You never do it just by yourself or just as a congregation. You are part of his church, the light in this world. One of the first things we did with Jesse and some of the other dogs was when the 2 students drowned on the senior class trip a couple years ago. Jesse's in the back, Noah is in front. You can usually tell Noah, he almost always has green on. But this is in the classroom after the drownings occurred, and you just see the students snuggling up to the dogs to grieve. There are some of the dogs that were there on the church steps. Jesse is the second one, and Noah is the third one. We are here at St. Paul's. We have gathered together as dogs. I chose these pictures, first of all, because it's when Jesse and Noah really began to work together, but also because it reminds me, and hopefully you, that right now, in this country, it is a tough time to be a youth. Tragedies, shootings, suicides, pressure to succeed, to do well in sports, to get into the best schools, social media with bullying and temptations and seductions. It's not an easy time to be a youth. You don't need a comfort dog to walk as his light in their lives when the darkness crowds in. Sometimes it just takes a smile or a word of encouragement, a pat on the back, a little hug, some patience. Just build the youth up, and you are walking as his light in this dark world. Fall Festival here at Concordia. Jesse and Noah and Tabby from St. Louis came to the Fall Festival. Get to ride in the float. The reason I pulled this one out is because as we ride in that float down Main Street at the Fall Festival, we hear people along the side of the street yelling out, "Jessie, Jessie, Jessie." She's really known in the community. The dogs are known in the communities. So we're in St. Louis. I'm at a Menards parking lot. I have a magnet on the door of my car that says Noah, and I come out, and there's somebody looking at my car. And I get a little bit closer, and she looks at me and she says, "I love Noah Comfort Dog. He visited me at St. Mary's Hospital when I was receiving cancer treatments." The comfort dogs are simply known out and about in the community. It's amazing the reach from a congregation out. But you don't need to have a comfort dog to walk as his light in your community. Giving to a food bank, voting, helping out in a fundraiser, greeting people on the street, picking up trash. All little ways that you simply walk as his light in this dark world in your community. This is Clinton, Missouri. I put this one up. You can see the two green shirts. That's myself and my oldest son, Matthew. I will mention him a little bit later in this message. But next to us on the end is Shiloh, she's the police ministry dog. And then Noah and Jesse, Louie and Jackson, and Chewy from Lee Summit. We are here because a police officer was shot and killed on a routine traffic stop. And this one, we are in Lake Ozark visiting at a sheriff's office because a deputy had lost his life. We all know that it's a difficult time for those in authority, police officers, firefighters, first responders. The comfort dogs seek those people out to visit them, to give them a little relief, a little bit of time to escape from their responsibilities. But you don't need to have a comfort dog when it comes to those in authority. When we were at Clinton, we were simply paying our respects. How do you walk as his light in this dark world? God's word simply says to give respect where respect is due. To those who serve us in a public office, as a police officer, a firefighter, a first responder, whoever, simple respect is a way to walk as his light in this dark world for those who are protecting and serving us. Right? Noah and Jesse need to relax too. They are resting. This is at the national conference. We take those vests off and they have great fun playing. Rest, relaxation, time to get away from things. We all need that. But the rest I'm going to mention to you is the rest that all of us need. It is called a Sabbath rest. It is time away from our work, all the busyness of life, and to come away and just to be with Jesus and rest in his light, to bask in the light of his forgiveness, to let that light grow within us as we proclaim his excellencies to this world. In a worship service like this, in a devotion, as we say our prayers, wherever we have the opportunity to come away and just rest with Jesus for a little while. That's walking in his light. Renee, I'm not sure if you realize I was going to put a picture of you in here. This is your retirement. But the reason I put this is because comfort dogs don't only come when there's sad times, they also come when there is happy times. Sometimes I like to describe a comfort dog as just making people feel better. And Renee, your retirement, there were the other dogs there. It was a time of celebration, a time of compliments and encouragement and joy. It was a special day it was for you and for us to be there with the dogs. But you don't need a comfort dog to walk as his light. When somebody has a celebration, an anniversary, a birthday, a baptismal remembrance, any time like that, that's a good time to be there, to say a word of joy, a celebration, a smile, a gift. You walk as his light in this dark world when you build people up on those moments of celebration and joy. With children, this is at the Missouri District Pastors Teachers Conference, and the children are gathering around here. Children love the comfort dogs. They seem just attracted to them, and the comfort dogs love children. When we have the dogs, it's just an opportunity for the kids to relax, to enjoy their presence. And as I think about that, how do you walk as his light in this dark world for the children? Here at St. Paul's, you have a school. It's a wonderful opportunity to bring Jesus into their lives, to support the teachers and encourage them, to build them up as they work with our children. Anytime that you are helping the little ones come to Jesus so he can bless them, you're walking as his light in this dark world. And you don't need a comfort dog to do that. This is a tragedy. This is in Liberty, Missouri, and we have there because a mother and two daughters were killed in a car accident. We haven't been able to work with Jesse yet for a natural disaster like a tornado or a flood or a hurricane or a fire. But the simple word is tragedy, disaster. The comfort dogs come to school shootings, nightclub shootings, concert shootings. Wherever there is grief and hurt and disaster, the comfort dogs are quickly there. And the effect they have on people is amazing. We get thank you notes from people who have really no connection to the church. They are just so pleased that they were there. But you don't need to have a comfort dog in the midst of a tragedy, a disaster. Sometimes a contribution to Red Cross or clothing or food, prayers, a memorial service that you attend. Anytime you're there for someone in the midst of a tragedy is important. And you're walking as his light in this dark world. Warrenton, This is actually one of my favorite pictures of John and Jim there with the kids. It's been a car accident. The second grader lost her life. So we were in the classroom there for the morning. And the reason I showed this is just because the kids aren't always sure what's going on, but to have adults that they can trust, that will sit quietly with them, that will bring the dog to them, to let them relax a little bit in the midst of a tough time. These 4 girls were special friends to the one that was killed, and so the 4 dogs that were there, they got to spend time with them separately. But think about it. You don't need a comfort dog to walk as his light when there's really tough times going on. Sometimes you just need to sit there and be with someone to let them know you care. Which brings me to this picture. Sometimes the comforter needs to be comforted. I showed you earlier the picture of my son Matthew. And a year ago, last September, Matthew passed away. My wife took him to the hospital, to the emergency room. They admitted him for some tests, and while she was there talking to him, he coded and probably had a pulmonary embolism and died. That following Sunday, we had the visitation for him, and you can see the comfort dogs came. They were there for us. This is a family, these comfort dog families. And you can see Noah and Jesse are side by side again. Today is All Saints' Day celebration here. Last year, at Concordia Seminary, we have chapel every day, and we had a chapel service for All Saints' Day. And as you're going to do in a few minutes, a bell would toll, and the name would be rung for somebody who had passed away that year. And so my wife and I came to that service with Noah, and when it came time for that part of the chapel service, all we could do was just sit there, tense, tears in our eyes, holding hands. It was one of the most difficult days of our whole life. Sue left to take Noah to go home. And I went back to my office. And one of the administrative assistants called Debbie, saw me go in. And she came in and said, "Is everything okay?" And I said, "No." With tears coming down my face, she simply came over and stood next to me and didn't say really anything, but just gave a little hug. I tell you that because you don't need a comfort dog to walk as his light in this dark world. On that day with the darkness just pressing in against us in our grief, yes, grief with hope, indeed, but still grief, here was someone who just showed a care and compassion. I do not remember much else about that day, Pastor. I remember the service, Matthew's name being read, the bell, and I remember her coming into my office. Sometimes it's just being there. Sometimes it's a hug. Sometimes it's a prayer. And you're walking as his light when the darkness has crushed in on somebody's life. Jessie is celebrating her 6th anniversary, 6th birthday. Noah's about 5.5. You've seen some of the things they've done together. We do not know what's going to happen in the next years to come, but I'm sure there'll be wonderful times of bringing encouragement and comfort and compassion and mercy to people who simply need to feel better. And we do that because Christ has called us to walk as his light in this dark world. And each and every one of you here today has that calling to walk as his light in this dark world. But I will say this, all of us are called to do so, but it sure helps when you have a comfort dog to walk as his light in this dark world.